Everyone, this is Gian. I'm back with another video. Can't even tie my scarf right. Bad, Gene, bad. But anyway, I'm back with another video, and this is, well, this is one where I know it's, come on. Excuse me. I know it's bait. I know that I'm taking the bait, but I don't care. So, this is an article from VG 24/7. I'm assuming VG refers to video game and hopefully not say certain parts of the female anatomy. Please, please, please let it be video games. But anyway, so this is the article. It's called "Femboys Are the New Video Game Hero." And do I have thoughts here? Because they bring up many of the video game action protagonists that existed in the 1990s, and given that I am indeed a child of the 90s, well, I have no choice but to respond. The bait is just too tempting. Anyhow, this is written by Stacy Henley. Now, I can't tell on its face whether Stacy is male or female, because believe it or not, there are some guys out there named Stacy. I've known a few. So, believe it or not, the name is actually unisex, kind of like mine. Just please don't call me John. And, yeah, so this was written yesterday. So I figured I would cover it. I'm going to read it and respond as I read it. I was actually trying to do it a different way through OBS, but for whatever reason, OBS won't allow me to scroll within the program itself. It's supposed to have a browser source function, and you can press interact, and it's not working for me. I tried OBS Studio, I downloaded Streamlabs, it's just not working. So I'm going to do this the old-fashioned way and then include a link in the description, and you guys can read it for yourself and tell me what you think. So the article starts out with, "Femboys are the new video game hero." So it says here, when he first appeared in 1997, Final Fantasy VII's Cloud Strife was a man ahead of his time. No, he wasn't. He was far from the first Bishonen hero in a Japanese work. But anyway, with the 2020 remake, the world is caught up and he returns to a gaming scene very different to the one he debuted in. Gaming was defined by attitude in the 90s. Duke Nukem walked the earth freely, badassery was the name of the game, and John Romero made us his bitch. In 2020, things are a little different. Where Cloud was once an outlier, he's now right at home. Okay, so here are the first issues I have with this entire paragraph. You cannot compare Duke Nukem and Cloud. Cloud is a hero made in a certain archetype for Japanese audiences in Japanese media. He's the Bishonen character. He's the beautiful boy, or the beautiful young man is probably a better term. Duke Nukem was this over-the-top pistache of like 80s Schwarzenegger style, big guns, big muscles, action heroes made predominantly for an American audience. It's comparing apples and oranges. They're not in the same realm in any sense. Duke Nukem is a first-person shooter. Final Fantasy is a turn-based strategy game. Two entirely different things. Now, are they both games that existed in the 90s? Yes. But so is Mortal Kombat and Sonic the Hedgehog. That doesn't mean that they're the same in any sense. So this comparison makes no sense to me. But anyway, continuing. With several AAA games penciled in for later this year being hit with delays, it's not inconceivable that Final Fantasy VII could be the last major release of the year. If that's the case, it looks like it's a straight fight between Persona 5 Royale and Final Fantasy VII Remake for Game of the Year. Between Joker and Cloud, that means it's a battle of the femboys. A Bishonen is not a femboy. There is a difference. A Bishonen, at least from what I've seen of Japanese manga and anime and media throughout my life, a Bishonen character is just a very pretty young man. but still a guy, still a man, right? You think of characters like, especially if you're old like me, you think of characters like Kurama from Yu Yu Hakusho or Kenshin from Rurouni Kenshin, right? The subversion is that while they have this very pretty, unintimidating, effeminate appearance, they're usually like the most threatening people on the team, right? Kurama in particular was a thief in his past life, and he was noted for his cruelty. And throughout the series of Yu Yu Hakusho, it shows more and more that if you piss him off, for example, if you threaten his family, in particular his mother, or if you taunt him about having to make a tough moral choice which costs a child their life, Kurama will hurt you badly. He has a noted vengeance streak of 1,000 miles wide. He does not behave like a woman just because he is very feminine and pretty looking. That's the whole thing, right? He fights with a rose, but Hiei is scared of him. That's the whole point. It's a subversion of expectations. His appearance is completely the opposite of his personality and his past. Same with Kenshin, right? He's short, he's slim, he wears a pink hakama. He's also the legendary Hitokiri Batosai, right? Batosai, the manslayer, the assassin for the Meiji rebels, who eventually won the war, right? Which ended the Tokugawa regime and ushered in the Meiji era, right? Kenshin's a killer. That's the whole point. He looks unthreatening, but he's the most threatening man around, if he wants to be. But anyway, moving on. Cloud and Joker both fit the Bishonen stereotype. Archetype. A Japanese concept describing androgynous young men. There's actually a bit more to that. I will link to it in the description. But the Bishonen is more than just the beautiful young man. It has a lot to do with Japanese art and history and culture and sort of like the ideals, beauty ideals. Such a lot more to it than just androgynous young man. But it says, continuing, I should say, Goro Akechi, also from Persona 5, fits this model, as does Nair, I don't know how you say it. Automata's 9S, it looks like 95. Maybe I'm just going blind. But 9S and Tekken's Leo. I guess we forgot about Warong in Tekken, right? The Korean bad boy character, who was always my favorite because of his taekwondo. He was like the cool edgy version of like Bake, and I always liked that about him. But anyway, right? And then it says it's not just Bishonen who fit this role, however. Resident Evil 2's Leon Kennedy, like Cloud, is a man who once broke the mold and now fits into it. Okay, again, I'm not the biggest Resident Evil fan, but I don't know where Leon broke a mold. Again, Japanese game. In Japan, it's known as Biohazard. Where did Leon break a mold? If I again, I'm not super knowledgeable, but Leon's a cop. Having a cop as the protagonist isn't breaking any mold. And while yes, he's young and attractive looking, he isn't feminine enough to pass as a woman. So really, where is Leon breaking a mold? I'll give you that he's probably was made in contrast to, say, Chris, who's more traditionally masculine looking, right? The short dark hair, scruff on the face, but that's about it. Creating a contrasting sequel character is nothing new. So where is he breaking a mold? Again, Cloud isn't new from the Japanese perspective. They've had Bishonen characters as part of their culture for decades, for generations. I don't understand this argument. While Pokemon Sword and Shield's Bede, I don't know, and Rihan both have elements of more traditionally feminine interests, be they fashion, pink, or simply looking good. Okay, there have been plenty of men who are into fashion. Fashion is dominated by gay men, so there's that. Pink, as I've explained in other videos, used to be a masculine color because it's a washed out version of red, and red typically represents blood, passion, sex, violence, war, and all this other stuff, or simply looking good. Has this person ever heard of the term metrosexual, right? The man who's very fussy about his appearance. There's nothing new in any of these things. The Legend of Zelda's Link has never fit the typical protagonist image, but with Breath of the Wild, this went further still. Again, Japanese character made for a predominantly Japanese audience, and second, Link is essentially an elf. Elves have always looked pretty. Even in Western media, elves are pretty. I mean, for crying out loud, what was it? Orlando Bloom, I think it was, in Lord of the Rings, right? Playing the elf character. Elves have always been represented as these very pretty, fussy, almost cat-like characters. What is your... I don't understand the point of this other than to just make me take bait, which is my own fault. So, but anyway, continuing. The redesign highlighted feminine aspects of his look. He's an elf. Clothing options that made Link your very own dress-up femboy. Ah, so here's what the person writing the article doing. They're fetishizing Link. Your very own dress-up femboy. If I actually could have edited this the way I wanted to, I would have had some Madonna playing right now. Dress you up in my love, all over, all over. Basically, what the person wants to do is just fetishize Link and just use him as own personal fem toy, own personal femboy. Anyway. And where you save the princess, Zelda saves you before the game even begins. That happened in other games. There's like I forget which Zelda game it is, but there's one where like Princess Zelda is like cross-dressing as the hero Shriek, I think it is, or something like that. And then it's revealed in the end that it's actually Princess Zelda. This ain't new. Zelda saves you before the game even begins and ultimately offers assistance rather than a plot device damsel. To just list examples though feels a little pointless. You think? What matters, sorry for the city noise in the background. What matters far more is not that these characters exist, but that together they point to a larger trend. Of course, there are exceptions to the femboy dominance. When you think of 90s gaming badasses, Doom Guy is probably high up on your list. Here's the first mistake you made, Stacy. You're assuming that everybody who was gaming in the 90s was playing Doom or Duke Nukem and those types of games. I wasn't. I was playing Japanese fighting games like Street Fighter. I was playing American fighting games like Mortal Kombat. So for me, when I think of gaming badasses from the 90s, I tend to think more of Ken or Sub-Zero, especially MK3 Sub-Zero. John Turk is ridiculously handsome. I'm just saying. Right? I tend to think of those guys. And then I do say Doom Guy, because I didn't play Doom. Doom and Duke Nukem and those type of games have never held interest with me. I'm more likely to think of Solid Snake than I am to think of Doom Guy. You are making an assumption that every person, or that the majority of people who were gaming in the 90s think of Doom Guy as a gaming hero or a badass. No, he wasn't. He was one of many because we had a vast representation of different types of characters who could be heroes in 1990s video games. For some, like me, it's going to be characters like Ken, like Sub-Zero, right? Or Solid Snake. For another person, it might be Super Mario. It might be Sonic the Hedgehog. For another person, still, it might be characters like Lara Croft or Samus Aran, because you had Super Metroid come out in the early 1990s, right? And then, of course, a whole other slew of games, and especially in Japan, right? Because a lot of these games and a lot of these characters mentioned are Japanese in origin, right? So for all the Japanese games that have been brought to North America, right, in particular to, and not to exclude other countries, but I'm an American, so naturally I'm going to be a little America-centric. But, you know, if you're talking about, in particular, North American releases, right, especially to the U.S. and Canada, right, for all the games that make it over here, there are even more made in Japan that stay in Japan, right? So there was a whole vast array of different types of heroes and protagonists in video games in the 1990s, and many that we'll never know about because they're going to stay hidden, at least to us from outsiders' perspective. They're going to remain hidden in their land of origin, in Japan. So for you to say, well, Doom Guy was probably up on your list, honey, you don't know my list. And that's the point. And Doom Eternal hit shelves just last month. 2019 was seen as a bit of a down year for AAAs, meaning AAA titles. But going back to 2018, God of War's Kratos and Red Dead Redemption 2's Arthur Morgan seemed to cut vastly different figures to Joker and Cloud. Whereas 2020's heroes are lithe and agile, 2018's are wide-set, muscular, and solid. If a tree was in the way, Joker and Cloud would climb it. Has this person seen the giant meat cleaver on Cloud's back that is called the Buster Sword? And the ridiculous amount of strength he has to wield it. Cloud is going to cut the damn tree down before he climbs it. Why would he climb the tree? Anyway, it says here, Arthur would chop it down and Kratos would rip it out of its roots. Still, all four of them do lend some credence to this trend. David Jaffe, God of War's original creator, took to Twitter recently to criticize complaints that the original game was misogynist. Veteran God of War fans have also been angered by takes that 2018's was the first God of War with a story compared to the previous blood-stained and brainless entries. While I'm not a God of War fan, I can certainly understand where those fans are coming from, being a lifelong fan, or at least up until the reboot of the Mortal Kombat games, and how those were seen by people who didn't play them and had moral objections to them as just brainless, mindless violence. So, in that respect, I can relate. To sit comfortably on the fence, what we can say for sure is that 2018's is a very different story. It casts Kratos as a father in a narrative about lost love, regret, and learning from the mistakes of youth. Meanwhile, Red Dead Redemption 2 offers up fistfuls of violence, but at the cost of Arthur contracting tuberculosis while he goes on an emotional journey similar to Kratos. Understanding that his life of wanton violence has brought him nothing but hurt, wishing there had been another way, knowing that there was another way, and lamenting that he didn't take it. Kratos and Arthur, there we go, both wish that they had just climbed the tree. They aren't femboys, but they are violent men who have learned that violence is not the answer. That's in stark contrast to the 90s and the 2000s, where games frequently rewarded bonus points for murdering anyone in sight. I guess this person never played Metal Gear Solid. Metal Gear Solid, for all of its violence, is probably the most anti-war game series that I can think of. because Snake constantly highlights the fact that all of his efforts ultimately come to nothing. Because every time he destroys a Metal Gear, another one just pops up in its place. He tries to put down Liquid Snake, you get Ocelot and him being possessed by Liquid Snake. Right, the whole series is about the futility of war and how it doesn't really accomplish anything, and how all it does is hurt and create very warped and twisted individuals. Even Snake himself is a very warped and twisted individual. This is especially highlighted in the first Metal Gear Solid, where he and Naomi have these where him and Naomi have these codec conversations, and she is appalled by the fact that he can talk about, killing Gray Fox, killing his best friend, or at least he believes at the time he had killed him, right? Fighting in a minefield and all this other stuff, which of course happened in the earlier Metal Gear games, right? And she's appalled by the fact that he can talk about violence in this way, and all he can say is, yup. Because he's so warped that he doesn't view it as this horrific thing. He views it as a sort of twisted competition. He even says that there wasn't any real hatred between him and Gray Fox. It was just the fact that they were on opposite sides and someone had to win and someone had to lose. So, again, what are you talking about games giving you points for murdering everyone in sight? They didn't. Unless the point was to kill everyone in sight, they didn't reward you for that. The point of Metal Gear is to sneak around and to not be caught. If you have to constantly kill all the baddies around, it actually just proves how bad at the game you are. Take it as someone who is very bad at that part of the game. I can't sneak around for jack. Like, this reminds me of this very bad faith and very weak argument that Anita Sarkeesian made in one of her videos in Tropes v. Women, where she tries to use footage of, I think it's one of the Hitman games, where he's like sneaking around the backstage area of like a strip club or whatever, and he's dealing with the strippers. Right, but as many people who criticized that episode pointed out, that every time the player who was controlling the main character took out and attacked one of the strippers, they were actually deducted points. So no, give me an example of a game where you were rewarded for cutting down swaths of foes in your path. Heck, even the early GTA games, which of course people who don't play them think that they're just murder simulators, if you run over and kill too many pedestrian characters in the street, guess what happens? The police come after you. And the more you keep doing it and the more that your wanted level goes up, guess what? They start sending SWAT, they start sending helicopters, they eventually send a tank. And I've played Vice City religiously growing up, so I remember all this very well. You were not rewarded. You were not, at least in the titles I can think of, you were not rewarded for killing people or killing video game characters indiscriminately. So if you're going to make that argument, you need to provide an example of it, because I can't think of one. If you, dear viewer, can think of one where you're actually rewarded for being a psychopath and killing innocent pedestrian NPC characters, please let me know, because I can't think of one. But anyway, going back to the article, most video games still rely on violence as a source of entertainment, conflict, gameplay, progression, and challenge, but the consequence gets highlighted far more often. There's been a shift away from empty masculine stereotypes, leading to gaming being taken much more seriously as an art form, and with that comes a further shift from empty stereotypes, which leads to it being taken more seriously. It's an unvicious cycle. Okay, here's the issue I take with this. The idea of empty masculine stereotypes. Doom Guy and Duke Nukem, in my opinion, are not empty masculine stereotypes. Are they very macho, over the top masculine stereotypes? Are they very 80s testosterone driven? Yeah. But so is Wolverine. And Wolverine is by no means a empty masculine stereotype. What frustrates me about this argument is that it's saying that these less overtly masculine characters, because they're still very masculine. Link is a masculine character. Cloud is a masculine character. Leon Kennedy is a masculine character. None of these guys, outside of their appearance, are feminine. But it's, to me, it's trying to like low key, or maybe it's high key, I don't know, shame these much more aggressively or traditionally masculine, and in particular Western, right? In particular Western type of masculine action heroes. There has been, and there always will be, enough space for what's the word I'm looking for the Japanese Bishonen action hero, right? Now and for the more Western action hero. There's room for both. You don't have to have one or the other. A person can like Final Fantasy VII and Doom. Many people do. You can like Cloud and you can like Doom Guy. Many people do. It doesn't have to be a fight. I don't understand why this person's acting as if Cloud and Leon, and again these more I guess androgynous male characters are somehow better than the macho ones that are represented by Doom Guy and Duke Nukem and whatnot. And then when it comes to the idea of empty stereotypes, I've been gaming for most of my life in some fashion. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that even, how do I put it? Empty stereotypes most of the time will not go far, right? A game doesn't have to be overly complex. It doesn't have to necessarily have the deepest story, but it can't be empty. If the game is empty, it's going to go nowhere. Let me give an example from fighting games from way back in the day, right? When Mortal Kombat took off in 1992, and in particular when MK2, which came out in 94, really took off, right? Many companies, of course, started making their own Mortal Kombat clone, right? For example, Eternal Champions is very much a Mortal Kombat clone, right? But one game in particular that is sort of noted in infamy for how bad it was this game called Tattoo Assassins, right? Now, I didn't actually play the game myself at that time, but I have seen people do playthroughs and whatnot. That game is every negative stereotype about Mortal Kombat that exists. That game is what people who don't like Mortal Kombat think Mortal Kombat is. And that game went absolutely nowhere because it was empty and it was vapid, and it thought that if you marketed and relied on sex and violence alone, that a good game make. No, it doesn't. A good video game needs interesting characters. It needs good gameplay mechanics. It needs to be interesting. It needs to, even back then, it needed a good story. Mortal Kombat still exists all these years later because it had all these things. It had the violence, which was very controversial for its day. It became sexier with MK3 and Trilogy, but didn't start out that way. But it had interesting characters, an interesting lore, interesting storyline, very fun to play, high replay value, and even with its issues, for example, its glitchiness, very stiff movements, which in all these years it still haven't solved, right? But it had much more good about it than it did bad, and that's why it continued on pretty strong throughout the 1990s and into the 2000s. It still exists today. If you make an empty game, 9 times out of 10, it's going to go nowhere. You actually need more than just sex and violence to actually have a game go somewhere. Because gamers, believe it or not, are not brainless. We're actually pretty damn brainy. We actually demand a lot, even from the games that are supposedly just sex and violence. We actually demand a lot from these games. We demand that we be engaged on multiple levels. Yes, Mortal Kombat, satisfies the primitive blood urge, right? Or the urge for like competition, right? But it also tells a very interesting story about conquest and redemption and winning and losing and fighting for what you believe in, defending your world and your realm, what's worth dying for, what's worth living for. There's actually some fairly deep stuff. Thank you, John Tobias. Okay, but anyway, getting back to the article. I tend to break into rants when I do this. But getting back to the article, it says here, Kratos himself is a metaphor for the game's development scene. Once a young man's jazz, fueled by weed, energy drinks, and the testosterone of youth, a lot of the old guards still remain. Corey Balrog was the lead animator for the first God of War and creative director for the most recent installment, 13 Years Apart. Naughty Dog's Neil Druckmann's been in the business for 16 years. Hideo Kojima for 34 and Mark Cerny a staggering 37. These people have shaped the industry, and as they've changed, gaming has changed with them. Okay, I'll give you that. Yes, a part of the reason why you see more complex characters in video games are characters who are just in general older, right? It's because of the fact that, yes, a lot of the creators are older now and they've grown up, and so the characters that they make have changed. That's true. But that doesn't mean that you have to insult what they did previously, right? Just because, these men have sort of grown up and grown older in the industry and therefore made works that were in very much a reflection of their own growth and change doesn't mean that all the video game characters that they made or the ones that came before them were somehow bad. They weren't. No women on that list, you'll notice. While there have been some fantastic female leads in gaming, Lara Croft is a classic, Horizon Zero Dawn's Aloy is well-rounded, they haven't yet had the evolution males have. Oh, here we go again. While Persona 5 captures a complex male in Joker, his companion Anne Takamaki, introduced as a bikini-wearing sexual fantasy of a pedophile, then forced into a latex catsuit, apparently against her wishes for laughs, is less indicative of a positive trend. Women in games are still waiting to be taken along for the ride, but when it comes to men, it's the femboys in charge for once. Again, not a femboy. A Bishonen is not a femboy. There is a difference. Number 2, I'm guessing this person's never played Metroid! Samus freaking Aran! Do you know her? Oh, calm down, Gene. Calm down, Gene. But I guess we're forgetting about characters like Chun-Li, or to take it way back, characters like Tyrus Flare, who's arguably one of the most powerful characters in Golden Axe, who can summon a frickin' dragon. Talk about your mother of dragons with that one. If you want to talk about complex female characters, okay, Honey, Stacy, whatever gender you are, I don't care. I'm still calling you Honey. Have you ever played Metal Gear Solid 3? That entire game is about a woman. Now, yes, you are playing as a man, but the entire storyline revolves around a woman, the boss, who's an incredibly tragic and complex character. I am so tired. I am so tired of these games these articles, I should say, making these bad faith arguments. Oi. But if you want to go into Japanese RPGs in particular, remember Final Fantasy X? Who's the lead character in that? Yuna. The story is about her. The story is about her conflict, her responsibility, and ultimately her salvation. That entire game is about her and how they all rally together to protect her from having to die fighting sin, right? Or take 10-2, where that was all girl power, right? You had Yuna, you had Riku, you had some other girl, some goth rocker chick. I think her name was Pain or something, but that was totally girl power, right? Then you look at, say, like Final Fantasy 13. That's all about lightning, and then they had several games later that were all about lightning and her conflicts. So please tell me again where women in games are still waiting to be taken along for the ride, because this article makes absolutely no sense. I would also like to point out, as many other people have in other videos that I've seen, that Cloud is clearly uncomfortable during the whole Honeybee Inn scene. He's not cross-dressing as a means of self-expression or gender expression. It is purely for practical purposes. He's not happy doing it. Now, if somebody wanted to make a character who cross-dressed as a means of self-expression, I think so long as the character is done well, right, and you're respectful of the culture and whatnot that engages in that, whether it's people who do drag or people who are, say, in transition and they're dressing as the sex that they want to be and all this other stuff. You want to touch upon those topics in your work. I think so long as you do it respectfully and you create a good character, that's fine. But that's not Cloud, right? Cloud ain't a femboy. Because the whole point of characters like the Bishonen is that their personality and their past, which are often very violent, offset and are in contrast to their usually very feminine appearance. And honestly, Cloud's appearance, especially in this game, is not all that feminine. He doesn't dress in a feminine manner with the exception of the Honeybee Inn sequence, where he has to, and he isn't happy about it. But anyway, that's the video. Tell me what you think. I know this is run pretty long, especially for one of my videos, but let me know what you think, and I will see you all in the next one. Have a good day, everybody. Bye.